Welcome to This Week in Money. I'm Jim Goddard. Today, Trends Journal editor Gerald Celente talks about how global conflicts will change how, where, and why we invest money. War is not cheap. And Mike Swanson from WallStreetWindow.com discusses the sharp downturn in the equity markets. We talk to Gerald Celente right after this.
More and more people are looking to the internet for intelligent, riveting, and thought-provoking interviews. To advertise on the Goddard Report and TalkDigitalNetwork.com, call 604-699-8600, 604-699-8600. Welcome to This Week in Money, the source for market opinions. Sitting in for Phil Mackesy, here is Jim Goddard.
My guest is Gerald Celente, publisher of the Trends Journal. He's on the line with us from Kingston, New York. I only knew about Kingston, Ontario. I didn't know there was a second Kingston. Nice place?
It's colonial Kingston. This is the seeds of democracy was sown here. We have the 1777 Senate House. It's the oldest public open building in the United States. And we have the Four Corners over here that it's the only place on each corner where there's a pre-Revolutionary War stone building on each corner. So it's the most historic intersection as well. And it's in the foothills of the Catskill Mountains. So, it's lovely. Hudson Valley.
You're going to be hosting a conference sponsored by the Trends Journal.
Yes, that's right. We call it History Before It Happens. And it's going through Sunday. And people from all over the world are coming, Jim. They're coming from Japan and Australia, Geneva, Switzerland, Sweden, London, Italy, Hawaii, Alaska. So we're very excited about it.
And what will be featured there? Or is it just one of those shows where you name it, you'll be talking about it?
No, I'm only part of it. We have some great lineup here, and a number of things too. We're bringing in two of the people that do work with the Trends Journal, Anthony Frieda, the brilliant illustrator, whose work we use. He's one, no one like him, and he'll be talking. And we're bringing in Eugene Gregan, a famous Hudson Valley artist, world artist, and he's talking about the art murderers. So. And then we're bringing in local people, too. There's a place called the Stockade. This was a stockade district. The Dutch were the first to settle here, and they put a stockade around because, the Indians wanted to kill them for stealing all their land. So they sealed the place up, and it was called a Stockade. And there's a bar called the Stockade. As a matter of fact, it just won one of the best 20 bars in the United States, and it was conceived by a couple that are both artists. But what makes this place so different is not only it's a great place, but they use the highest quality ingredients in everything that they make, and they go back to the late 1800s in mixing drinks. So they have all these kind of specialty drinks that they mix, from the American drink book, and all, of course, everything local that they can possibly have. So we're going to talk about how, for instance, Jen and Paul, that were artists, created their own future by doing something very different, but doing it with quality at the highest level. So it's a continuing learning process, is what the conference is about, and a lot of other things as well. And of course, I'll be talking about trends and what we see coming next, and how to track them.
What is the next big trend?
Unfortunately,
or you have to pick a topic and then say what's the big trend in, say, finance.
Well, the big trend in finance is, this thing is going to. It's a bubble. Everybody knows it. I mean, I'm not making this up. You look at the news this past 2 weeks. How many mergers and acquisitions were there? From 40 billion to 8.5 billion, on and on and on. There's more merger and acquisition activity in the first 6 months of this year. It rivals 2007 because of all the cheap dough out there. They're printing this stuff up with record low interest rates. So they're creating another bubble. It's as simple as that. And when you look at, for example, you're looking at median household income, it's below 1999 levels. And then you look for the 1%, they're way up. And that's because of all the cheap money that's building the equity markets and blowing up the bubble. And it's not only in the United States, it's a worldwide infliction. If I was to say to you, listen, I got this great scheme. You know what we're going to do? Negative interest rates. Yeah, that's right. Negative interest rates. If you want to put money in the bank, we'll charge you. But this way we keep the Ponzi scheme going, and the big guys could borrow money almost for nothing. So that's what we really see happening. It's only a matter of time.
One of the analysts I talked to said companies right now reacquiring their own shares at very high prices. It's like a snake eating its own tail. Exactly.
Again, it's a Ponzi scheme. Look where the money is going. It's only going to the top. The rest of society is going down. They still don't call what's going on in Greece a depression, or what's going on in Spain. 40% youth unemployment in Italy, Portugal. You go around the world, and then the Ukraine crisis. Put on top of that the Gaza-Israel crisis, add into that the Syrian crisis, and they just keep going around the world. Venezuela, hey, Argentina, they're talking about will they default on their bonds? And of course we know the answer. So we're going to see how that impacts the market long term as well.
Well, speaking of what happened in Europe, could you see the governments in Canada and the U.S. approving another buy-in to banks to bail them out instead of using taxpayer money? They just rob you of your own bank account?
They'll rob you any way they can do it. Any scam that they could come up with, they'll do it. Whether they're the bail-ins, whether they're the bailouts, whether they're taxing you for every little thing that you do, whether they add a value-added tax, whether they increase your income tax, whether they tax you for sleeping too long or not sleeping long enough, they're going to do something to steal your money. They have a real great track record of doing it. When you're driving in your car, the police stop you for every minor infraction. They'll rob you 6 ways till Sunday.
And of course, whenever they put up fees too for using a park or whatever, that's another tax, isn't it?
Exactly. It's they shaft the people any way they can. And that's what they're going to keep doing. Because that's all, the only people the politicians represent are the multinationals and the people that feed them money to run their campaigns and to keep them into power. They could care less about us. I mean, people better grow up about this myth called democracy. It doesn't exist in North America. What do you have? You have two parties to choose from, basically. How about calling them the Bloods and the Crips? I'm serious. They're murderers and they're thieves. They start wars and kill innocent people in foreign countries, and they steal your money in the names of too big to fail. And every other way, they're murderers and thieves. Why can't people call a spade, a crook, and a thief, and call them politicians?
In Canada, a lot of people are upset that the Canadian Armed Forces, who used to be known as the world's best peacekeepers because they won't back down from anyone, all of a sudden now we've become aggressors by taking part in the war in Afghanistan. And now the Canadian flag doesn't stand for, hi, we're here to make sure you guys don't kill each other anymore. It's disappointing for us.
It should be. And this is all part of multinationalization and globalization. It's as simple as that. There's no myth of a one world government that's happening. The one world government's maybe four, major governments in controlling different parts of the planet. So whether you have, the Russia-China, cooperation or NATO, US, and Canada, and then, Southeast Asia, whatever it might be, or the BRICS, whatever it is, it's a conglomeration of countries. And they take their people to war for any reason that they can make up. And what they do, it's the same story over and over. They set the narrative, and they form the conversation. So, for example, when that Malaysian airline was shot down over Russia, or did it blow up in the sky? So here's my take. When I first heard it, Jim, Malaysian airplane, crashed over the Ukraine. Man, I said, another Malaysian airliner. What's going on with this company? CNN had that story about they can't find a plane as a headline story for 7 weeks. We documented it. We put it in the Trends Journal. I said, what's going on with that airline? But that's not what you heard. The first word you heard was, Russian separatists shot the airliner out of the sky with the help of the Russian government. Within minutes. I remember when this Flight 800 blew up leaving Kennedy Airport here in New York. People said they saw missiles going at it. Right away, the government officials came out. Let's not rush to judgment. We're going to put together a committee, and we're going to look into this. We're bringing in the greatest experts to piece this together. And it went on for months and months and months. But no, instantly, they told you they set the narrative. So now, whether or not we ever find out who did what about what, it doesn't make any difference. It's embedded into people's minds. Let's hate the Russians and those Eastern Ukrainians. And then you see the same thing going on with the slaughter going on in Gaza. The story keeps changing. Oh, it was 3 kidnapped Israeli kids in occupied territory, teenagers. And Netanyahu came out and said, Hamas did it, and they're gonna pay for it. Huh. And then we just heard from an Israeli police chief over there saying that, no, it wasn't Hamas, it was a lone cell. Hamas had nothing to do with it. Well, that doesn't make any difference. Bombs away. Oh, and then there's the tunnels. Well, the tunnels, why? This is the second story. Terror tunnels. Let's call them terror tunnels. Listen, it's an occupied area. It's 7 miles wide by 25 miles long. And there's 1.8 million people jammed into it. No, they're not using them as human shields. The Israeli military is bombing the hell out of them, and they're turning buildings into rubble. And if there are tunnels, when was the last time a tunnel strike went into Tel Aviv? And what they're using the tunnels for are bomb shelters, escape routes, because the whole area is sealed in. It's a prison. It's a Warsaw ghetto. You can't get out by land, you can't get out by air, and you can't get out by sea. Of course there are tunnels. But let's do the terror tunnel narrative so people could really have a simple way for us to destroy a lot of innocent people. As we speak, over 140 killed. And then when the UN building blew up, again, the narrative was laid down. The Israeli military, we didn't do it. We don't know what happened. It was Hamas. They were using the people as a human shield, and they blew it up. And then 4 days later, the story changes. Yeah, Israel blew it up, but we'll forget about it now because we set the narrative. And they do that with every issue, whether it's whoever your enemy is, by the way, they're militants. That's the other thing. Well, everybody in Palestine that fights back is a Palestinian militant.
Well, as the old saying goes, one person's freedom fighter is another person's terrorist.
Yeah. And by the way, Israel is in violation of the Geneva Conventions. They're in violation of UN resolutions. No, according to the Geneva Conventions, no occupying nation is supposed to go in and put its people in there and steal their land. And I'm tired of hearing that God was a real estate agent and the Bible was a land deed. If you want to keep stealing land, call it what it is, but I'm tired of the word settlements too. These are real estate developments, and the people are fighting back. And you go back to our Trends Journal, the winter edition 2013, it was written in 2012, we said exactly what would happen. That the Palestinians would they would keep eliminating them, and you look at the maps between 1948 and now, and see how much their land mass has shrunk, and before you know it, once upon a time there was a tribe called Palestinians, but they have no land left anymore, just like they wiped out Eskimos, Native Americans, and other tribes whose names no longer exist. And that's what's going on now. And I don't want to be called an anti-Semite for speaking about this. I speak about atrocities my country commits or any country. And I also want to make this 100% clear. Netanyahu, Golda Meir, Perez, Ben-Gurion, Sharon, Omer, all of these prime ministers are not Semites. They're Ashkenazi. They're Eastern European extraction. They are colonists just like the Portuguese, the Spanish, the English, the French, and other conquering nations went into the Middle East and Africa, made up their own story of why they're taking the land, and they're not indigenous people. So you can't call anyone that's an anti-Semite for condemning the actions of Ashkenazi. If you want to call me an anti-Ashkenazi, that's only partially correct, because not all Ashkenazis are doing what they're doing in Israel now.
More with Gerald Celente next on This Week in Money.
Always consult your investment professional before making any investment decision. More and more people are looking to the internet for intelligent, riveting, and thought-provoking interviews. To advertise on the Goddard Report and TalkDigitalNetwork.com, call 604-699-8600, 604-699-8600. This Week in Money is archived online at TalkDigitalNetwork.com.
Welcome back to This Week in Money. I'm Jim Goddard. We're talking to Gerald Celente, publisher of the Trends Journal. Do you think other wars are going to pop up?
They're popping up all over it, and they're out of control. Look what's going on in Libya. Look at the Nobel Peace Prize winner Obama for his humanitarian mission that overthrew a sovereign nation. And that when they overthrew Gaddafi, they let through all of these so-called Islamic fundamentalists, and no more, they're not Islamic, and they're not fundamentalists, they're madmen. They have nothing to do with Muhammad or Islam. They're crazy people. Now they have the weaponry that was left behind from the overthrow of Gaddafi, and oil refineries are aflame. And it's not only an environmental disaster and an economic disaster for Libya, it's an environmental disaster for the region. The place is up for grabs. And where are the people being held accountable that started the war? Where, Cameron, I think he was for that, wasn't he? And Obama and Sarkozy. I don't know about your guy Harper, but he's another one of these chicken hawks that likes to talk war, that probably couldn't fight his way out of a paper bag. Unlike the generals who never want war, like Eisenhower, two-term American president, supreme commander of the Allied forces, 5-star general, and he was a man of peace. He knew the destruction of war from World War II, and he warned the public that the military-industrial complex was robbing the nation of the genius of the scientists, the sweat of the laborers, and the future of the children. And here we are, on a downward spiral. Our infrastructure's rotted, our middle class is evaporating, and all they keep talking about is now, hey, we're going to help that Ukraine government. Hey, what Ukraine government? Didn't make the news, Jim. Only one day hardly made it. The government that the United States, the West set up after the overthrow of Yanukovych has dissolved. That's right. Kaput, gone, evaporated, and nobody talks about it.
And they wonder why they weren't organized enough to go and investigate the plane crash.
Oh, yeah, it's a war zone. That's another one. It's a war zone.
Maybe moving on to something else. What about the BRIC nations, Brazil, Russia, India, China, forming their own investment bank? Does that mean the World Bank is on its way out?
It's going to be competition at some point. There's no doubt about it. And that's going to happen when the dollar crashes as a reserve currency. And I have to say, you've heard me say this before. When all else fails, they take you to war. You go back to, we have it in this Trends Journal. You go back to George Bush. The dot-com bubble happened. He gets elected, barely wins the contested election. Before 9/11, he was basically 50% nation approval rating, only after a few months in office, which is very low. 9/11 happened, his approval rating skyrocketed. Go over to Israel. Look what happened with Netanyahu. His approval rating was going down into the tanks. Now they're at war. His approval rating is skyrocketing. So to answer your question about the BRICS, there's going to be a point when the Western nations overextend themselves, and they're going to do it with war. Is going to be one of the ways. When their reserve currency declines, the BRIC nations are going to rise as competition. And they're going to start doing more and more business using their own currencies, or maybe come up with a new reserve currency. And I believe, of course, they're centralized in Shanghai, but China again has massive problems. You look at one of the top trends for 2014. We call it Global Chinatown. The Chinese are buying up properties all over the world. I don't have to tell you Canadians, it's all over. They're coming all over. They know the bubble has burst in China. I'm in touch with high-ranking people within the industry of development and real estate, Chinese, and they'll tell you straight out, game's over. So they're not in a very strong place. Brazil isn't, India's not, Russia certainly isn't. So it's going to be a while before the BRIC nations are able to have a reserve currency and a bank of their own that challenges the supremacy of the United States and the World Bank.
At what point do you see that happening?
It's hard to say. But it's going to be a long-term process, and eventually it will happen. Because, you look throughout history. You don't have to go back so far. Remember one time, the pound sterling, was the currency, the global currency. Before that, the Spanish, the Portuguese. It's throughout history, the Romans. So, times change. But to put a date on it is really, really difficult. But again, all eyes should be on war because the culture of cruelty is so apparent before us. And what happens is, as the atrocities keep getting shown more and more, people become immune to them, and so they accept them, and then they keep expanding. And I'm very concerned of a global blowout. And when this war happens, I believe that, Einstein was a pretty smart guy. I believe in what he says, that they asked him, he said, I don't know how the Third World War will be fought, but I can assure you the fourth will be fought with sticks and stones. And that's why we're launching an OccupyPeace.us movement right here from Colonial Kingston. Every one of the founding fathers, beginning with Washington, unlike these little chicken hawks, these tough guys, these commanders-in-chief and prime ministers and presidents who never fought a day in their lives, Washington led the troops. He was a real warrior. He warned of no foreign entanglements in his farewell address, as did Franklin, as did Jefferson, as did Adams and Madison, as did all of the founding fathers. So we're starting an Occupy Peace movement. Bring home all the troops, rebuild America, no more to war. Because I'm a trend forecaster. I have a track record of calling the shots before they happen. And as I look at this, we're on the path to war, and the wars of drum keep growing louder. So we're doing what we can do to stop the march to madness.
Somebody said a march to madness, too, is the trend for governments to put so-called carbon taxes on fuel and other items. But would it make any difference if that tax was there or not? Australia's taken their carbon tax off.
No, that was a whole gimmick. It was a gimmick, and I was totally against it when it happened. That American fraud, Slick Willie Clinton pulled that one off with Gore, the phony environmentalist. Because the environmental movement was very strong back then. And people wanted something really to rein in the destruction of the planet. So they came up with this carbon tax gimmick so Wall Street could trade off it. That's all it is. Oh yeah, I won't burn as much pollutants, and you could burn them for me, pay me for them. Only a criminal mind and a sick sociopath could come up with that one. How about some real environmental legislation? Because if we had real environmental legislation, Jim, necessity is the mother of invention. That we're still burning carbon fuels, fossil fuels at this point in time is a fossil idea. Again, going back to Eisenhower. Instead of wasting that trillions on destroying the planet and killing innocent people, 90% of the casualties in war are civilians, that money could have gone toward creating an alternative energy. Imagine the tens of trillions of dollars that could have gone into research and development. We'd be sitting clean and pretty now rather than talking about something as fossil as a fossil fuel and a carbon tax.
I read an article on the weekend that said we're still paying the price economically for the First World War, where 10 million young men were slaughtered needlessly, and the best minds in the world who would have been building mines and looking after Canada's natural resources. In British Columbia, entire communities, their male populations were wiped out in that war. And we're still paying that price economically. Is that the kind of thing they still want us to suffer from?
Yeah, who are they? They are madmen. They're sociopaths and psychopaths. World War I, as any historian knows, or anybody with a half a brain that knows how to read and think, was a totally useless war. And what was it for? It destroyed Europe right at the height of its creativity and creation. And as you said, entire towns lost their young people. Look what happened to France. On and on. All the civilization that's been destroyed. World War II as well. And now they're on to the march of war again. Look at Iraq. How come they're not bringing these people up on war crime tribunals who started this war, feeding us fake reasons? And they never stop. Saddam Hussein has weapons of mass destruction and ties to Al-Qaeda, I tells you. And they roll out that Colin Powell with a dog and pony show at the United Nations that was fit for a high school science class. No proof, more lies, just like they're making up the stories about, hey, you know that Assad has chemical weapons and he's using them on his people, until that was proven to be a lie. But Kerry, the Secretary of State, kept spewing it out at every meeting that he could attend in the Senate and Congress and on the air. One lie after another. And who pays? We do. With our money and our life. No more to war. I've had it. Vietnam, how about that one? That was a beauty, wasn't that? He only slaughtered 3.5 million Vietnamese under another lie. The Gulf of Tonkin incident that did not happen the way they lied to us about. And Robert McNamara, the Secretary of Defense at the time, an arrogant piece of garbage. I remember it well. Talking down to everybody, finally admitted that it was a hoax. He should have been brought up on war criminal charges before the SOB croaked for the slaughter of innocent people and destruction of so many of our citizens, one after another, and they don't stop, and the people salute their presidents and prime ministers as though they deserve their respect.
Well, a survey done in December said that the Harper government was the least popular in Canadian history, the least effective government ever. First time that's ever happened. With a person who said they were elected with
know them. Look at the failure. Look at it.
Well, he gets a majority government with only 39% of the vote.
Again, you look at the governments that we have. We have, as I said, the Democrats and Republicans in the states. They're the Bloods and the Crips. They're murderers and thieves. And I'm not saying that sarcastically. And so are your governments. Anybody that goes to fight other countries and they're not being threatened and they're slaughtering innocent people and sending you money to do it, you're an accomplice to the crime. One of the topics we're going to be speaking at this coming conference is morality and how it's been lost. They say the fish rots from the head down, and when you look at the rotting heads of government, you can see where society's going.
Gerald, can people find out where they can find out more information? What's your website?
Trendsjournal.com, trendsjournal.com. And the Trends Journal is the only publication where you're going to read history before it happens. 50 pages, full color, no advertisements. And it's the truth and trends. Subscriber generated only, global audience, over a third of our subscribers are from outside the States.
After the break, Mike Swanson on This Week in Money.
More and more people are looking to the internet for intelligent, riveting, and thought-provoking interviews. To advertise on the Goddard Report and TalkDigitalNetwork.com, call 604-699-8600, 604-699-8600. This Week in Money is archived online at talkdigitalnetwork.com.
My guest is Mike Swanson of wallstreetwindow.com. Welcome to the show, Mike.
Oh, thanks for having me. How are you doing?
Well, it's been okay so far. What a meltdown on Wall Street, or was it on Thursday and Friday?
Yeah, I was actually very surprised on the action Friday because I wasn't surprised that it fell. I think we're in a correction, and the tip-off to that was last week. We saw a lot of companies report good earnings and then drop anyway. Their stocks dropped. That happened with Starbucks, for example, is one of them. But there's a whole slew of them. And when you start to see stocks sell good news, that's often a sign that a correction is coming. And then the other day, we saw it again. The U.S. government reported second quarter GDP growth of 4%, and it didn't help the market, and of course, the next day, Thursday, the Dow was down over 300 points. I think we're going to go a little lower before this correction's over. But the thing that is surprising was that the VIX, which measures the volatility people pay for options, so it goes up when people buy lots of puts and get scared. It jumped up 30% on Thursday, the day the Dow fell 300 points. There's a similar day like that a few weeks ago, and the Dow went up the next day. And this time it didn't do that. And that's actually fairly surprising because that is a sign that there's fear in the market. And today, Friday, the market was down a little bit in the first hour or two of trading. The VIX was down too, which was to me a scary sign. And the market, finished the day down. So the correction isn't over. It does seem like you would think we should bounce for a day or two, but if we do manage to even do that, I think it'll be a very weak and tepid bounce. And I just think we're going to see the market go a little lower, maybe another 100 points in the S&P 500 and 1,000 on the Dow.
Should people not overly panic having seen this drop?
Yeah, I don't think they should. I mean, that said, I do think there's a lot of risks in the stock market in the long run. I think one day we're going to have another bear market. But if we see the market continue lower, I mean, we could even see a day where the Dow's down 500 points or something. It's possible. They shouldn't panic and sell out then. If people want to sell out, I think they should really let the correction play out, and then you let the market rally for a couple weeks or a month or something, and then get out. In fact, I mean, it's different. I mean, if you're fully invested in this stuff, that's one thing. But if you got some cash, I actually think not now, but soon, if we bounce and then have another big leg down, it might be worth doing some buying. And what I'd be looking for, though, everyone here in the United States loves Facebook and Apple and Google and Yelp and these very volatile technology stocks. That's really excited the masses. It's what you hear about on CNBC almost every day. But in reality, I think what people need to focus on, if they want to buy something that they're not going to just trade and flip and play these sort of really crazy games with, if they want to really invest and hold and make real money over the next few years, what they should do is take a look and see what sectors of the market are holding up as the market drops. And I can just tell you right now, the thing holding up is gold stocks. The gold stocks are actually up about 20% year to date, while the Dow's in the red for the year. And even though they did fall yesterday, today they were up, and they haven't broken down like the stock market has broken its lows of the past month. The gold stocks haven't, and I think that that means to me that when this correction is over, typically the sectors that hold up the best then go up the most, and I think that's going to happen. And I've been talking about a coming bull market in gold stocks now for a couple months, but that rally can make it come to fruition. The HUI's got resistance at 250 over the past year. It's been in a sideways trading range after it went through a bear market in 2011, 2012, and it ended in 2013. It was terrible and vicious for people who were in it, but it ended. And since then, we're going sideways. We're stabilizing. The stocks are actually extremely cheap. It costs about $1,200 to mine an ounce of gold out of the ground, and it's only, $100 above that or so. And the stocks have low PE. Some of them have very low PEG ratios even, which measures the 5 years estimated earnings growth. It's a way to buy stocks that have growth in a low valuation. There's stocks like that. There's stocks paying dividends, and they're holding up, as the market corrects. And if we get the rally after this market correction's over that takes the HUI Gold Stock Index through 250, we're going to have an incredible run for the rest of the year and probably the next 3 to 5 years, because that's how long most bull markets last. And you're talking about huge gains made. And this is a sector, though, that I know people in Canada follow it and talk about it, but here no one's talking about it on television. CNBC won't say a word about what's happening. All they focus on is the Dow, the S&P, the NASDAQ, and about a dozen of these tech stocks or household stocks, which are overvalued and at this point after a 5-year bull market, and they're kind of ridiculous.
Mike, is there any market right now that you would put money into, considering that a lot of folks are scared, even if this is a minor correction in the Dow and the S&P and so on? You know how easy panic spreads.
Well, I don't know. Yeah, I don't know if it's a minor correction or not. I say that I think the correction will end in August, in a few weeks. It could end in a couple of days if we fall real fast. And I do think we'll get a rally after that. But we could see the market have a failed rally and go into a bear market. That's what happened in August, September, October 2007. We could face something like that, and then the U.S. stock market go into a bear market. But I'm not sure. I'll have to see what the rally does. But even if that were to happen, I actually think this gold sector and commodities as a whole would go into a bull market anyway. In fact, if you look at the 2000 bear market in 2007, as the market rolled over, there were sectors that started bull markets just as the market topped out. In 2000, it was tobacco and utility stocks. In 2007, it was the U.S. dollar and treasury bonds as asset classes. And this time, just looking at things, the only market in a situation to go and start a new bull market is gold and commodities. So I think people that are interested in gold and commodities should really just forget about the U.S. stock market and S&P and what it might do, and just focus on the charts and what they know about those markets. Now, if you want to go outside of that and look at other countries, it's interesting what's going on. I mean, I invested in Europe and Greece a couple years ago and sold out back in February. And Europe is actually trading down and kind of acting weak. The Russian stock market, is actually very cheap on a valuation basis. If you look at the cyclically adjusted PE ratio, it's like 7 or something or below, and in the U.S. is 25. I actually think that's an interesting market. But it may be some time before they go up. Really, actually, it sounds kind of funny, but the market that may have the most potential as far as making gains out of it is the market in Cyprus, because it fell over 90% over a couple years, and then last year it bottomed right when it got in the news for defaulting and having debt trouble and a couple of its banks getting blown up to pieces. But that was the bottom, and it's rallied, but it's still in a sideways range. So I think people could invest there, and it's interesting. I haven't done it yet, but the tough part of Cyprus is there's no easy way to buy it. There's no stocks trading in our markets in Canada, the U.S., or funds or anything. You would have to open up a brokerage account there in Greece to do it, and it's basically it's just a bunch of small cap, practically penny stocks over there because it's a small country and these stocks are just national companies. They're like restaurants, a chain of grocery stores, hotels, a cement company, stuff like that. So, but it would be a way for someone to make money if they're looking to invest in something really cheap and just hold it for 5 years.
Argentina defaulted on their debt again. Is that a good time for you to take a look at their stock market too?
Yes, yes it is. And Argentina, interestingly, has also had a big decline, a 90% stock market decline, if you price it in U.S. dollars over several years, and it bottomed about 2 years ago and started, in my way of analyzing things, it based out and broke out last year and shot up about 30% or something, but it's come back down, and now the news is out, and it's got a cyclically adjusted P below 4, so it's priced as if it's the Great Depression. And there are, stocks there that do look interesting. I'll name one. I can't remember the name of the company, but the symbol is EDN. It's the national, it's an electrical utility company there. But if you look at a chart of it, it's not, these stocks aren't crashing. ARGT is the ETF for Argentina. It's not crashing or anything. What people need to realize is that I read a long time ago about financial crises that a lot of times a crisis will occur because people don't know the extent of the bad news, so they keep selling. But then when the last bad news is out, the crisis is really over. That doesn't mean the economy can boom or grow immediately. It's kind of the case of what happened in the United States. Our economy really has never recovered, but the crisis ended years ago, the banking crisis. If, we have another one, it'll be a different crisis. So probably, unrelated to Wall Street banks would be the U.S. government or something. President worries about its debt, but the point is when the news gets really bad is actually the more interesting time to buy, and when the news is super, super good after the market's gone up for 5 years, it's the opposite. It's time to be very cautious.
A contrarian always wins then.
Well, in the end, but you've got to be patient. It's like the Cyprus situation. I don't know when, I think that market is definitely bottomed. Money is to be made, but I don't know when it'll really start to go up. I can't predict it's going to start to go up in 6 months or 1 year or 2 years, but so you have to have that sort of patience, and frankly, most people don't have it at all. I mean, even with the gold market here, I think we're on the verge of a bull market, but I mean, I can just tell you from emails I get from people can't wait a week or a month to see it happen. It's the number one reason why people sell after a market's bottom is they just can't wait anymore. They're impatient and they hear about Facebook or something stupid.
Mike, is there a place people can go to find out more information about your point of view on the markets?
Yeah, sure. They can just go to my website, wallstreetwindow.com, and there's all kinds of free articles right on the front page of the site they can take a look at.
Thanks to our guests, Mike Swanson and Gerald Celente, and thank you for listening. I'm Jim Goddard for Phil Mackesy. We're back next week with more This Week in Money.
This Week in Money is a production of Howe Street Media Incorporated.